1 second. Can you see my screen? No.
No.
Oh, 1 second. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we are live on YouTube. So in today's session, we're going to apologize, Lisa, for the last tutorial where you couldn't join. So we now started a new unit, which is Unit 3, Mobile Application Development. And in today's session, we're going to understand how to plan a mobile application. So let me just open the PDF slide. Okay. So today, as I said, our learning outcome, we're going to be able to plan for mobile application development. So in our indicative content, we're going to look into user requirements that we need for us to create our mobile app, technical requirements as well, which should include the backend of an application, links to database, and also how the application is going to work. But also we're going to look into our user interface and user experience. And then we will look into wireframes, which should have basic structure and shows how the application works. And also we're going to conclude with prototype, which should allow to navigate and which will allow navigation of the application. So if we just take a minute and look into this video, which will give us a quick understanding of planning a mobile app. Can you guys hear? Can you hear the video?
No.
Oh, I muted.
No, I can't hear it.
No. Okay. One second. Are you sure you can hear?
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Up? No?
No, I can't hear it.
One second. Oh, okay, share sound.
Hello, in this video I'm going to explain what the standard app design workflow looks like. The first step is business requirements gathering. From that you can generate a set of wireframes, which basically dictates where all of the controls and the data gets laid out on all of your screens. With that skeleton in place, you can actually put paint on it and create a set of design comps. Now the design comps are going to show you what your app will look like as a finished product. Then from the design comps, you're going to generate all of the images that you need to import into Xcode to style your project. So let's talk about each of these steps a little more closely. During this step, you'll be deciding what your app does. It's not enough to say that you want to build a social media app. Really think through what the core features of your app will be. Then after you know what the core features are, think about any additional supporting features that would be nice to have, but not exactly a core feature. The reason we make this distinction between what a core feature is and what a supporting feature is so that you don't put all of your eggs in one basket, meaning that you can create a smaller but essential version of your app containing all of the most essential features and release that first. before you commit to building all of the features out just to discover that people don't like your app for some reason. So it's a way of just sort of hedging your bets. Now you write down all of these features down into a document because you'll need to refer back to it, and you might even need to show this document to other people. Now all of this upfront work is to provide a solid foundation for you to create your app design. Next up, you're going to take these business requirements and organize your ideas into something that is visual, specifically wireframes. When you're working on wireframes, you're focused on usability and organizing the information in a way that makes sense. Forget about how your app looks for a second and put yourself in the shoes of your target user. Imagine they're using your app. How do you present the data in a way that's easy to understand? Where do you put buttons and menus so that using your app is intuitive? Use tried and true structures that are ingrained in iOS users. For example, if your app has several different sections, iOS users are very used to using a tab bar along the bottom, so you can consider using that for your app in this scenario. Sometimes when you're stuck, try downloading some popular apps and tap around the app. Get a feel for how they're organizing their app to get some ideas for your own app. What you want to get out of this phase is a set of rough wireframes that show all of the screens in your app and how the controls and data are laid out on each screen. You don't need any fancy tools for this, even just paper and pencil is fine. The important thing is that this step forces you to stop and think through things and to make some decisions, making sure that all of the business requirements are met, because at this stage of the app development process, things are still easy and cheap to change. Trust me, you want to avoid a situation where you realize you're missing a requirement after the app has been coded. At that point, it's going to be costly to change things. After you've got a solid idea for how your app is going to be structured, it's time to give it a custom look and feel. This is where your design skills are going to come into play. Using the wireframes as a guide, you'll be using a graphics program to create the design. Some popular tools for doing design comps are Sketch, Figma, or Photoshop. I figured that I need to take a little bit of time to mention interactive prototyping. This is where you turn your design comps into something that can be put on a device to be swiped through. Some of these prototypes can get pretty intense with tapping on hotspots to trigger different transitions. The whole goal of an interactive prototype is to be able to experience something slightly more tangible than just design comps on a screen, because at this point in the process, things are still easy and inexpensive to change. Now, this step is completely optional. If you need to convince someone to invest in your business or maybe a potential partner, then it could be useful to turn your design comps into a swipeable prototype on your device so that you can show it to people. However, if you're a developer building an app for yourself, you can probably skip this step. I spoke with some of my friends who are still in the consulting industry, and they told me that they don't use interactive prototyping because their clients won't pay for it. But the caveat is that their clients are long-term clients who have been with them building apps for a long time, so they're used to knowing what to expect. For other clients who are new to the app development process, they might want to pay for an interactive prototype. Once your design is done, you'll need to separate it out into pieces and export them as JPEGs and PNG images. You'll put these images into your Xcode project, where you'll apply them to the elements in your storyboard. And when you're done, your app will have a custom look and feel. Alright, so that's the app design process. Hey, did you join my free Facebook community yet? That's where I hang out along with a ton of other people learning iOS just like yourself. I also post.
So this guy gave us a quick introduction of how we need to plan a website. So he mentioned Figma, which I think is really, really good for web design, because when it comes to creating wireframes, is not a really easy process. So with this platform here, Figma, will be really advantage for you guys to create some design. And also PowerPoint is really recommended, because PowerPoint is not just for presentation, but you can create wireframes. So as we saw from the presentation, wireframe are simply the creation of how you want to outline your website, your mobile application. So in this part, as we already mentioned, some other some requirements for us to build mobile application is looking into building mobile application with native mobile application or cross-platform mobile application, or maybe with hybrid or progressive web applications. So when it comes to look into this, look into them, we need to look into the strength and weakness. So when you're working with a native application, there are several advantages, such as will allow you to access all the device-specific features. For example, camera, GPS, or any other type of features is pretty much executable from iOS devices or maybe Android devices. And as native application, the platform specific, and they're written in a platform native language. But if we look into the weaknesses of a native app, could be a higher development cost. Therefore, when it comes to, for example, building an app, depending on the nature, if it's like personal or business, you then have to hire a mobile app developer. So depending on which type of programming language is going to use and what are the costs, you have to look into choosing maybe a cheap option. So with a native application, we know that they're quite expensive due to the fact that it's a long process and it will take a lot of time, and time we all know is money, and they will also have to maintain your application, and this is when it comes into user experience. When it comes for web application, we already know a couple of advantages and strength, because we have already covered this unit previously. So we can quickly look into some of the advantages. So one of the strengths is that web-based application can typically be developed much faster than native application, and the maintenance is easier compared to a native one, and there are low development cost. Definitely they're cheaper than native application or even hybrid. And the weaknesses are that the application system perform can be much slower than a native application due to the fact that they've been built directly from a web rather than an open source, such as Android Studio or iOS with Xcode on with iOS, which is used for Apple or Mac devices. Hybrid applications, which allows us to work within web and native. So it's pretty much a combination of multiple applications. The advantages is less expensive option for organization. Is easy to maintain as well, and is also low development cost. But the weaknesses are that the application system perform can be much slower than a native application and a web application as well. And hybrid application cannot avoid of a device's full range of features, as they are often restricted while running through the web views. When it comes to creation of our user interface, as I said, is recommended to plan. As we saw from the video, the guy created a repo where you put the primary features and secondary features. And once you have set up your primary features, you can now look into creating a user interface. And as you already mentioned, Figma is pretty much useful for web designing, app designing. And we also have to consider some useful steps that has to be taken into consideration, such as testing it. Once we have created our user interface, we have to test it to see what are the debugs, errors, and how we can improve our design. And it makes it easier for us because we spot these mistakes and improve our skills as mobile app developers. And as we can see, step 2, app design is not a solo mission. So it's always recommended to work with a team, or even once you've created the app, you have to work with your client, which is the one that will be using the app, and he might have some useful feedback to share with you in order for you to improve the features and usability. And then, as we can see, you have to design with the user in mind. So you have to put yourself in the user's shoes and see how could this work and how could this be effective. So as I mentioned from the last session, when it comes to developing with Android application, we have to be working with Android Studio open source, which I tried to download on my machine, but I couldn't due to some error settings, which I'll try to fix for the next tutorial. And then if you're working on a Mac operating system, on the iOS, on the Mac operating system, you're going to work with Xcode. Xcode is the open source to build iOS mobile applications, and the programming language used for Apple is Swift, while for Android Studio is Java or Kotlin. Also, there are various online open source. Say, for example, we're now looking into download Android on our machine, which is what happened to me due to the fact that I was having some issues, but I do have a model PC. So some of them online open source are Buildfire.js. So Buildfire.js is an online open source where you can you can code from scratch, and you can have an emulator where you can run and test your. You can try and run and test the application. I do not own an account on this PC, so I cannot sign up here at the moment. But from the presentation, I shared a couple of them: Apache, Cordova, Ionic framework. So if you guys are let me see if I can. Let's see if I can log in from here. No, I don't have the option to log in with Google. These are really good online open source. So depending on the nature of which app you want to build, as I show from my presentation. We either download Android Visual Studio on our machine, Android Visual Studio, which I've already downloaded, but I cannot set up, but I will fix this issue. Then there's Xcode. So for Xcode, you should be on the Mac operating system, which I think, Yusuf, are you a Mac user, right? Hello, Yusuf. Yusuf has left us. But I'm pretty sure Yusuf is on iOS. He's on the Mac, and he can run this. So coming back to our presentation, when it comes to build a prototype, there are several steps which were introduced from the video. So we have to understand the program. We create a report with the relevant information we need to do. Identify key functionality requirements, so the key features and the secondary features. Create a sketch of a primary scene. Therefore, we're going to create this on our PowerPoint or with Figma. And after that, we'll create several pages of our mobile application. And then we have to turn wireframes into a prototype. Then once we've done that, we translate our wireframe into our final design. So this is everything for today's session. Is there any question for me?
Okay.
Okay. So our next session will be on Thursday, and then we'll have one more session on Saturday. Okay. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Okay.